What's up, guys? This is Chris from DraftDashboard.com.
Here are my DFS picks for MLB World Series, Wednesday, October 21st.
These picks apply for DraftKings and FanDuel. Before I get started, please drop a like on this video and hit that red subscribe button
And hit that bell icon.
so you don't miss our new videos.
In this video, I'm going to go over my top picks for today's MLB slate. And if you stick around to the very end of this video, we'll use the Draft Dashboard tools to make a DFS lineup using the picks we just made. Okay guys, MLB World Series. Let's take a look at this MLB Showdown between the Tampa Bay Rays and the Los Angeles Dodgers. Okay, so let's take a look at the pitcher position. I like Tony Gonzalez with a pretty big pitching advantage here over the Tampa Bay Rays. Tony Gonzalez is only giving up a .475 OPS versus lefties. And he's also only giving up a .550 OPS versus righties. He's facing 4 lefties and 4 righties, only 1 switch hitter, which is his weak pitch. So he's got pretty good splits here. Doesn't really have any pitches versus the Rays yet. And he's $10,400 DraftKings salary and the same price on FanDuel. He has an ERA of 2.31. His record is 2-2 on the season, pitching an average of 78 pitches per game. He's averaging 17 DraftKings points per game on the season, and he scored -1, 10, and 17 fantasy points in the last 3 games. So he's coming off of a bad game here, projected at 17.1 fantasy points here tonight. So I like Tony Gonzalez here versus the Tampa Bay Rays. Now I also like Blake Snell. So I don't mind playing either of these pitchers in this matchup here tonight. But because it's a showdown, you don't have to play a pitcher. It's up to you. I like to stack my batters, but if you think it's going to be a low-scoring game, go ahead and throw a pitcher in there. Okay, let's take a look at the catcher position. I like Mike Zunino with a 51% batting advantage over Tony Gonzalez. Mike Zunino is batting 37% better versus righty pitchers. He's batting a .644 OPS versus righties. And Tony Gonzalez, he pitches 14% worse to righties as he does lefties, giving up a .550 OPS versus righties. There's no at-bats versus Gonzalez yet, and Mike Zunino is only 6,600 DraftKings salary and 2,300 less on FanDuel. He's only averaging 4 fantasy points per game on the season, but he scored 5, 16, and 0 fantasy points in the last 3 games, projected at 6.2 fantasy points here tonight. Now I only suggest this play here if you are struggling with your salary and you need some salary relief. He could put up between 5 and 15 DraftKings points for you at this low price point, but he's a risky play. So I like Mike Zunino if you need to save some salary here versus Tony Gonzalez. Okay, let's take a look at the first base position. I like Ji-Man Choi with a 76% batting advantage over Tony Gonzalez. Ji-Man Choi is batting 35% better versus righty pitchers. He's batting a .823 OPS versus righties. And Tony Gonzalez, he pitches his worst ball versus switch hitters, 41% worse than his other pitches, giving up a .870 OPS versus switch hitters. There's no at-bats versus Gonzalez yet, and he's 6,800 DraftKings salary and 2,600 less on FanDuel. So this may be my favorite value play on the slate. He's only averaging 6 fantasy points per game on the season, and he scored 0, 10, and 0 fantasy points in the last 3 games. But he's projected at 7.9 fantasy points here tonight.
So if you're looking to save some salary, this guy's got fantastic splits here tonight. So I like G-Man Choi here versus Tony Gonzalez.
Real quick, guys, I got great news. For a limited time, we're offering a full 30-day trial to Draft Dashboard. The tools are all about saving research time. You can see the last 3 games, the fantasy points per game, the targets they got per game, so you can see how involved they are in the offense, the rushes they got per game. Seeing all this stuff on one screen helps you save time and make better picks. Oh, and if you're tired of doing research every day, we just added a cheat sheet that shows hand-picked plays for the slate. No confusing stat lines, no headaches, just a simple cheat sheet that shows the absolute best players for your lineups.
Okay, who do we have at the second base position? I like Chris Taylor batting against Blake Snell. Chris Taylor is batting a .777 OPS versus lefties, and Blake Snell is giving up a .708 OPS versus righties. Taylor is 0 for 1 versus Snell, and he's 7,000 DraftKings salary and 2,000 less on FanDuel. He's averaging 8 fantasy points per game on the season, and he scored 10, 8, and 7 fantasy points in the last 3 games, projected at 9.8 fantasy points here tonight. So I like Chris Taylor here versus Blake Snell. Okay, let's take a look at the third base position. I like Justin Turner batting against Blake Snell. Justin Turner is batting a .835 OPS versus lefties, and Blake Snell is giving up a .708 OPS versus righties. There's no at-bats versus Snell yet, and Turner is 8,800 DraftKings salary and 700 less on FanDuel. He's averaging 8 fantasy points per game on the season, and he scored 9, 6, and 16 fantasy points in the last 3 games, projected at 10.8 fantasy points here tonight. So I like Justin Turner here versus Blake Snell. Okay, who do we have at the shortstop position? You know what? I've given you so many value plays here. You probably don't need Willy Adames, although he's a pretty decent value play if you want to switch it up. But I'm going to give you Corey Seeger. The splits aren't great here, but you've saved so much salary with your other positions, and he's a quality batter here. So Corey Seager versus Blake Snell. Seager's batting a .765 OPS versus lefties, and Blake Snell is giving up a .793 OPS versus lefties. So he pitches his worst ball versus lefty batters, 11% worse than his other pitches. There's no at-bats versus Snell yet, and Corey Seager is 10,400 DraftKings salary and 800 less on FanDuel. He's averaging 10 fantasy points per game on the season, and he scored 13, 0, and 14 fantasy points in the last 3 games, projected at 11.5 fantasy points here tonight. So I like Corey Seager here versus Blake Snell. Okay, moving on to the outfield position. I like AJ Pollock with an 18% batting advantage over Blake Snell. AJ Pollock bats 28% better versus lefty pitchers. He's batting a 1.045 OPS versus lefties. And Blake Snell is giving up a .708 OPS versus righties. So Pollock is 0 for 1 versus Snell. He's 7,400 DraftKings salary and 600 less on FanDuel. He's averaging 8 fantasy points per game on the season. He scored 3, 0, and 3 fantasy points in the last 3 games, projected at 9.7 fantasy points here tonight. So I think he's due for a good game here. So I like AJ Pollock here versus Blake Snell. Now, I think I gave you pretty much all the good value plays on this slate, so you'll be able to fill the rest of your lineup with guys like Mookie Betts, Randy Ozarena, Cody Bellinger.
If you want to try all these daily fantasy tools for yourself, click the link in the description below this video or just go to draftdashboard.com. You can use our DFS lineup optimizer to build quality lineups using our picks and your own custom player pool. Click the link in the description below this video and try all these daily fantasy tools right now. Thanks so much for watching. Oh, and don't forget to subscribe to this channel and hit that bell icon so you can get instant updates whenever we post a new video.
Thank you so much for watching, everyone. If you enjoyed this video, please smiggity smash that like button and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Oh, and please comment below with your favorite player for this MLB slate. I love to hear what you guys have to think. Thanks again, and good luck.